Starting off from last week, the Mets made their first major addition, signing Luis Severino to a one-year, $13 million contract. The hard-throwing right-hander will cross the river to Queens after spending 13 years with the Yankees organization, campaigning 2 All-Star selections in 2017 and 2018. But his success has also come with some recent struggles, battling multiple injuries in the last 4 years, undergoing Tommy John surgery in 2020, and suffering multiple upper body injuries ever since. Severino made his return last season with the Yankees, pitching just 89.1 innings as a starter and posting a 6.65 earned run average, 6.14 fielding independent pitching, striking out just 18.9% of batters in 2023. Looking to rebound and regain his old form, the Mets take a bet on the 29-year-old Severino, expected to be slotted into the Mets rotation come opening day.
I think in a recent, it might have been the live stream that we did or a previous podcast, I had went on the record saying that I was not a big fan of even looking at Luis Severino. And this was before the Mets even signed him. And it's a few reasons why. The main reason is his best days. It's been quite a while. I mean, we talked about, okay, he's only 29, but when he was an all-star, by the time next year starts, that's 5 years ago. I mean, that's quite a while before a guy was a top echelon pitcher in the league. And I talked about it that I felt that he was always overrated, even in his best years. Luis Severino is a guy who reminds me a lot of Noah Syndergaard at his best, where these are guys who could give you 5 innings of 2-run ball, but that's all they give you is 5 innings because it took them 100 pitches to get it done, because you have guys fouling it off and every count is a long count. So if he's not actually going deep into ball games, if you don't have a dominant bullpen, even at his best, I'm a little skeptical of him. So you have the fact that his best days are behind him. And then number 2, like we always talk about, the health. I mean, it has not been good over the past few years. Having Tommy John is one thing. Like I say, it's a standard thing with pitchers nowadays. I mean, it feels like a prerequisite. Everybody gets Tommy John surgery. But the fact that even after that, he's had these upper body injuries, can't hit 25 starts these past couple of years, that's not a good sign. No, he's already 29, turning 30. And as we know, it becomes even harder to make your 25 to 30 starts a year once you're getting older. So for me, I see Luis Severino as a guy who's been on a steady decline, and, Father Time would tell you that's going to continue. And I think whether it's Luis Severino or all these other relievers the Mets have been signing, they are taking the bounce back 1-year flyer approach. And like we say, there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. But I think that with the state of the New York Mets rotation right now, the lack of depth that the New York Mets rotation has right now, I don't think putting $13 million into Luis Severino would have been one of my first courses of action. And mainly because if he gets hurt, what are you turning to? We talked about David Peterson already being out. I mean, Tyler McGill, he's next man up. And then, like we say, what do you have after that? That's what really worries me, because it's like, okay, do we trust Jeremy Hefner this much? Do we think that Jeremy Hefner could turn Luis Severino and a guy who, like you said, high 5, high 6 ERA back into an all-star? Where do we have the evidence that Jeremy Hefner has done that? And just from the Mets staff and development as a whole, where do we have the evidence that they could do something like that? And is it really just that it's David Stearns, that he's the guy who could turn everything around when it comes to pitching? Or was that Stearns identifying guys as good bounce back candidates, and then the Milwaukee staff actually doing the work and getting these guys back on track? That's what I'm really curious to see, because all these guys the Mets are signing, we'll get to Jorge Lopez later, all these guys that they have something good about them. They got a spin rate. They got something that you like. Can they put it all together? That's going to come down to coaching. That's going to come down to the Mets personnel to get these guys to do that. I haven't seen it with the pitchers that the Mets have brought in recently that they could do it, because it's not like we've seen, Stearns comes in and then you have a new pitching coach and then you have a bunch of new guys in the front office. You have a bunch of new coaches that are going to help with this pitching lab that we like to call it. We haven't seen those hires. So at this point, it's like with anything. You have to just trust that David Stearns knows what he's doing, because on paper, this was not my first choice, second choice, third choice. He's a guy I really would have targeted. I just don't think he's worth it. I think that best years behind him, and that's if he's even on the mound.
I will go completely from the other side here and say that I completely disagree. Oh, he's going to be coming into a 29-year-old season. Yes, he's had injuries. Yes, he has had problems to stay on the mound. The reason why I do like this move is because I think that if the Mets are making this look like a wait and see year in 2024 to see what they can get, if they don't perform well, this is someone who someone could buy really high on at the trade deadline if he does pitch well. The thing is that when he came back, the stuff was definitely still there. I think that he was one of the main candidates for just completely tipping pitches when he was here. I hate to say just tipping pitches as the main reason why he pitched like crap, but the stuff was still there. It regressed a little bit, obviously, coming back from multiple injuries, but the stuff was definitely still effective enough to put up those zeros as he was able to do before he got injured. I also saw some speculation about how there was a connection between Severino and Carlos Mendoza, and that maybe there's a reason why he was brought over here. I don't know if that's true. I think this is a really good signing of somebody who has had good stuff in the past, who has strikeout stuff, who actually throws hard, has actual depth in their arsenal. And I think that the main point that I get from this is the fact that I think that the Mets are going for a 6-man rotation. And the reason why I say that is because of who they are pursuing, the top name. We'll talk about that later. Senga, of course, there's been talks about how Stearns wants to know where he's at and ask him if he prefers to pitch every 6 days or every 5 days or what his conditioning rules are. And then you have guys like Luis Severino. We also saw them attached to Eric Fedde as well. You know, some that probably could give you a 5 and fly if they don't do well or if they have stamina issues. But a 6-man rotation, the main focus of a 6-man rotation is to keep all of your arms healthy. And we have seen that a lot in Milwaukee under David Stearns, where they do a 6-man rotation, 2 lefties, 4 righties, these different combinations of pitchers. So I really like this approach because I don't know if it's just a PTSD situation where we had this Harvey, DeGrom, Syndergaard, Matz, Wheeler, where that rotation only pitched once healthy at the same time. But I really want to keep this rotation healthy. And I really want to keep this rotation not having to rely on the older guys to push all the way through. I feel like they're catching it at the best point right now. So if this was a 6-man rotation, would you take a little bit lightly to an addition to Severino?
Yes, because I think that we still have quite a few holes in this rotation.
Yeah,
obviously, we'll get to the big guy later on. We're talking about Jose Quintana and Kodai Senga as your two, we kind of know that they're going to be there every 5 days. And even Quintana, I mean, he's a guy that's now looking in his mid-30s. Obviously, he just came off the surgery last year, but he finished the year okay, and generally speaking has been a pretty durable arm, so he should be okay. You have Senga, but I just think that I wanted someone more, again, we talk about like that Bassett role, but someone who's a little more reliable, a little more is healthy every year, gives you more innings every 5 days. I think that's a higher priority for the Mets right now, especially if they are looking for an ace in Yamamoto. I think they still need that guy in the middle of the rotation who's going to be giving you that every 5 days. I don't think that's what Severino is going to do. I mean, and in order to make a 6-man rotation, I want to see 6 good arms. And it's like we say, don't just have 5 arms, 6 arms. Give me 10 arms. I mean, how about that? Like, how about actually having quality guys who could step up for you? They haven't done that yet. And obviously, there's still a lot of offseason to go. But I'm just talking about in general, the past few years, the whole Steve Cohen regime, we are yet to see it. So that's the main thing that I want to see, because all these other organizations, they call up they have young arms that they could either trade for pieces a la Yankees Juan Soto, or could just step up and be quality starting pitchers for you. That's the thing that I really want to see this team do.
We'll see what they do, because I am interested to see, because they said okay, they're expected to bring in multiple starting pitchers here, and I don't know what.
Yeah, if he ends up becoming the 5, I'm okay with that. Yeah. But I think right now, I'm just saying he just wouldn't have been one of my first guys that I'm going out to sign. I
Oh
think
no,
that's all they
absolutely. I
fight
think
on.
I think there's other guys who have had like injury issues that I probably would have gone after over Severino, but I think that this is someone who has performed as a 2 before when he's fully healthy and he's actually able to go on the mound as an actual piece. And then also there's a possibility that he could still do that being 29 years old. Like, I understand, like, yes, he's declined recently, but there still is upside with him going into his early 30s. And I think that if it works, it works. You can get a lot of value from him, especially from like the back end of rotation with the stuff that he has. And if it doesn't work, he's gone next year. It's always the low risk, high reward pieces, but this also is this little factor of Severino, who has had top profile stuff a lot for a long time in his career. You know, as we said, he was in the Yankees organization for 13 years. This is a good foundational move of someone who could definitely contribute. Obviously, it's not someone who you can rely on to get 170 innings out of this year. It's not going to happen. It makes me feel like, especially just in the direction that we've seemed to go with the Mets rotation and free agency, there hasn't been much that's leaked out, but what we have seen, it seems like they're aiming for that 6-man rotation. This is the perfect arm, I think, to slot in here. Someone who has really struggled to stay healthy, but has the stuff to give you possibly more innings with a 6-day resting period. If I could get 5 from Severino every 5 days, hopefully I could get 6 from Severino every 6 days. Like, that's how I'm seeing it. If I can get 6 from Severino somewhat consistently, I think that's good value for $13 million for 1 year.
And I think Eric Fetty would have been that sixth man, so to speak,
Probably, yeah.
in the rotation, but he ended up choosing the White Sox. So it looks like the Mets definitely. I mean, if the fact they had an offer on the table for Fetty at a low AAV makes you think that yes, they are trying to keep that approach of okay, 6-man, maybe long reliever, thing like that, swing man. So we'll see who else they actually target for that role, but it does look like something they're trying to do.
I've said multiple times that I want to see the balance of quality and quantity, and you're definitely seeing this with that. So if they do go with a 6-man rotation and they do build up the pitching depth under Stearns, this is quality right here. Severino already, if I were to full on guess, like just off the top of my head, he already has the 3rd best stuff out of this entire pitching staff right now, behind Senga and Diaz. Like if I were to say that, because like again, doesn't say much because the Mets have really had a lack of that recently, aside from like a few like profile guys. But if you're talking about pure tools and pure talent, I'm taking a 29-year-old Severino right now over a Max Scherzer that I'm giving $40 million to, or a Justin Verlander that like I am taking the upside compared to these guys who are old and I have to rely on them at the top of my rotation. So after all the risks that they've taken with pitching recently, this is not a risk that I am opposed to. I'm not saying this is a slam dunk move, but I think this is a good addition to the rotation with the upside that he has, with the stuff that he has. And also, he still does have history of pitching very well. And if he doesn't pitch well, you toss him out, move on.